Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to bird class. I always hate interrupting the coloring because I can tell you guys have a good time doing this. But unfortunately, we do have to talk about, well, maybe not unfortunately, but we do have to talk about birds today. So I'm going to clear these images. I'm going to move on to our announcements. There are assignments that are due before midnight this week, midnight Sunday this week. So there's a quiz and there's some short answer questions. And your project topic and format request is due before midnight on Sunday this week. So there's a place on Blackboard where you can submit the topic that you're interested in doing your project on and what format you would like to do your project. This means, do you want to write a paper? Do you want to do a presentation? Do you want to write an original song? Do a TikTok video, whatever you're interested in. You can submit it here. If you get a grade of 2 on that, yeah, you don't have to email me. You can just post it on Blackboard. But if you've already emailed me and I've responded to you, then you're good to go. You don't have to also put it on Blackboard. If you put it on Blackboard and you get a score of 2, that means everything's approved, no problems. If you get a score of 1, that means I made a comment, and please go look at that comment. It may just be, that's a great topic. Have you considered X? Or that's a very broad topic. Maybe you should narrow it down to this. Or, I have a good resource for that. It's just me saying I'm communicating with you. It's not a rejection. The only outright rejection would be a score of a 0. And even then there's going to be comments on it. And I almost never give zeros out. I usually, if I don't automatically approve everything, I just have something to say about it. And that's what the score of 1 tells you. The score does not count towards your final grade, so you don't have to worry about not getting a perfect score on your project request. The projects themselves are due before midnight on Sunday, April 17th. If you're doing a presentation, I will reach out to you by email next week to talk about when your presentation is due. Any questions on this? All right. So we talked last time about nutrition, and I kind of gave you the big picture story of nutrition. And today we're going to start out talking about caging. We've talked about this before in bits and pieces as we've talked about different types of birds. This is going to try and cover this topic in a little bit more detail. Remember that different types of birds are going to have different requirements. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the details here. And I might say, this applies to large birds or this applies to small birds, just so you can kind of get a good idea here. Regardless of the bird we're talking about, bigger is better, unless the bird is sick. And we'll talk about that when we talk about diseases specifically. But as a general rule, bigger is better. All right. So general rules regarding bird cages. The space between bars, the bird should not be able to get its head through. Okay, that's a pretty straightforward one. Certainly, this Amazon parrot cannot get its head between these bars. But besides the fact that that's a ridiculously small cage for that bird, look how thin those bars are. Parrots need larger bars because this guy could tear those bars apart. Yeah, the bird could absolutely bite its way out of this cage. Now, the budgies in this cage, they don't have the strength to mess with this and break out. But certainly this Amazon could. So that's something to consider. We also need to think about material. So cages, the bars should be metal. There can be plastic like the tray on the bottom. If the bird can get its head between the bars, it's not necessarily that it can escape, but it can get its head caught and panic. And that can have cause serious damage to the bird. Their necks do break relatively easily. Yeah, they can break their necks that way. Now, you'll occasionally see bird cages that have wood. Not a great idea. Bigger birds like parrots can tear up the wood. If you buy wood from the hardware store, it may have it may have been treated with various chemicals that could be harmful for your bird. And it's hard to clean. Easy clean is very important. And those metal bars can be what's called power or powder coated. So they can be colored. If you're buying wire at the hardware store, you're making your own cage, you probably need to be careful about the product that might be on the metal. If it's bare metal, you're fine. But some metals are sold with like a plastic coating on the outside. And again, your birds can tear that plastic off, potentially swallow pieces of it, and have lots of health problems coming from that. Generally speaking, black cage wires are less visibly obvious. So obviously that's a personal opinion, but I think they tend to look better in black. Now, some of the other things to consider. Do you see these? Do they have wire floors? Some cages do come with wire floors. A lot of them will come with some kind of grate on the bottom. Most of the time, I recommend removing that because it's not a comfortable surface for the bird to walk on. A flat floor is much preferred to wires. So can you see this structure here? This is a little sliding door. It slides up so you can put a food cup or a water cup from the outside or get it out. I have yet to meet a bird who hasn't been able to figure out those doors. They're very lightweight. They're very easy to move. And lots of birds will go, I'm going to push it up and go right out of the cage. So these types of doors, not great. They need to be held closed in some way to prevent the bird from escaping. We also have to worry about how the door latches, especially with bigger birds. They can get out a lot of cage doors. I know, for example, cockatoos are notorious for being able to open the door to their cage, and people have literally had to put padlocks on the door to keep it closed, to keep the bird from escaping. A latch like this one on this budgie cage, as long as it's tight, it'll keep the budgies in. It would keep canaries in. It would keep finches in. Anything bigger than that, and they're gonna be able to push this right open. Now, when we're talking about the wires, the small songbirds, the canaries and the finches, the direction of the bars does not matter. But parrots climb, and they use their beak to climb. So this cage is not great for budgies. There's a big gap between this horizontal bar and this horizontal bar. And the way budgies climb is they put their beak, they grab hold of something, and then they pull their feet up and grab hold, and then they reach their beak up again. And if this space is too far for them to reach, they can't climb as much. And that's not very good for them at all. So horizontal lines, horizontal bars are kind of important. For anything in the parrot group. Okay, this is a good time to get a screenshot. Now, when we're talking about caging, except for the small songbirds in a flight cage, a cage big enough for them to fly around in, all birds need time outside of the cage. All birds need time outside of the cage for both physical and mental stimulation. If you've got canaries and finches that are hand tamed, absolutely time outside is very, very good for them. Okay, I'm going to come back to that for a second. All right. So hand tame means they are comfortable being touched by your hand and picked up, or they will stand on your hand or your finger. All right, getting ready to go on to the next slide. So the best cared for birds stay out during the day, but they have a sleeping cage. I do recommend that birds sleep in a cage. It helps reduce the likelihood that they're going to get into some kind of trouble in the night. Some species like cockatiels have nightmares, and they will have or night terrors, and they will bang around, and you don't want them banging around the house where they might, you know, fly into a window or something, or get up a good head of steam and slam into a wall and get injured. So not only is it good to prevent the bird from damaging itself, it also helps protect the bird from things like your dog getting too excited and trying to play with the bird in the middle of the night, or I hate to say this, but things like rats that might get into the house. So if your birds, yeah, Tawny, the night terrors and the cockatiels, it seems to be more common in cockatiels that don't have another cockatiel handy. So a lot of times they will, if they wake up in the night, they will whistle, kind of calling for the rest of the flock. And if they don't get responses from the rest of the flock, then they kind of start to panic, because being alone in a wild cockatiel it is very, very dangerous, and it's something that almost never happens. Yep, it is sad. We could do a lot better by pet birds than what the average person does these days. So, how do you get your bird back in the cage? All birds should know the step up command. So let me demonstrate this. I'm going to stop showing you the screen here so you guys can see Sassy in the back of my cat's head. Fidget, Fidget, go away. Okay. So step up is using a perch or your hand to convince the bird to stand on the perch or your hand. And it's very simple. If you're trying to get it on a perch, you push the perch up against the bird's abdomen. Usually what happens is the bird will stretch up, and then finally lift a foot and put it on the perch. Or if it's a small bird, you can do it with a finger or your hand. All right, I better put Sassy back because the cat was way too interested. So step up, very important command for all birds. even so, a lot of times birds are going to go, no, I don't want to be in my cage. I want to be loose all night. So the best way to really help train your bird to go to bed at night, give them their best meal of the day in their cage at bedtime. So this is going to be fresh fruits and vegetables, whatever your bird really, really likes to eat. So you're rewarding them for going back to their cage at night. And then when dinner time is over, cover the cage. So you can see this is a purpose-made cage cover. It clearly was made for this cage. You can hand sew things. You can find tablecloths or something along those lines, maybe sheets. But whatever you use, the cover should block light as much as possible. And the sleeping cage should be in a quiet place. If you like to stay up late playing video games and you know are shouting at the people you're playing against at the TV or something, that's not a great place for your bird to sleep. You want a quieter place, as dark as possible. Why? Okay, I see somebody put something in the chat. Yes, the bird, I guarantee you that if you swear a lot, your bird is going to learn to swear. Absolutely. And then try finding a new home for it. Whew. Yeah, it's very common for pet birds to learn to swear. When I was a kid, there was a pet store in a mall that had parrots. And apparently they bought a parrot off of some guy who'd had it as a pet. And that parrot cussed like a sailor and was very, very loud. And so you'd be in the mall and you'd hear, "Fuck you," echoing down the mall. Yeah. I don't think the pet store people were very thrilled about that, but everybody else, well, I'm sure not everybody else thought it was funny, but my teenage self thought it was funny. Okay. So why are we covering the cage? First off, it helps the bird get a good night's sleep. But it also means the bird won't wake you up with sunrise. So if the bird sees the light of sunrise, it's going to wake you up and want you to get up and feed it breakfast and play with it and let it out of the cage. And so having a good cage cover can reduce this. The other thing it does, controlling the bird's perception of day length, the amount of sunlight it gets, can help control the sex hormones. So spring and early summer are breeding season. Faith, your hands up? Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a way to control their circadian rhythm.
Exactly. You're controlling the circadian rhythm. Yes.
That's smart.
Yes. Yes. During breeding season, birds can get more difficult. I don't know a polite way to put this, but when their hormones are raging, they're going to be more likely to bite. Yeah, yes, Faith, they're going to be horny. Absolutely. Kind of like teenagers. And we all know teenagers can be challenging. Sorry for anybody who's still a teenager. But yeah, it can be quite difficult to handle a bird during breeding season. Difficult to handle them during breeding season. It's difficult to handle them during molting. So a lot of times birds can be challenging. All right, go ahead and take a screenshot. Oh yes, Mary's got a cute kitty too. Birds also need a travel cage. So this is to travel to the vet. And again, there's a lot of difference between what the small songbirds need and what the parrots need. Songbirds, you can use a cardboard box, or they make small fabric carriers that you can use for your birds, small birds, but larger birds and the parrots need something they can't chew their way out of. This plexiglass box here on the left is clearly designed for traveling with a parrot. It's not very big. It's got a metal door on both sides. It's hard to see on the back, but there's one on the back and one on the front. It's got a good steady perch attached. And the rest of it, there are some small holes in the side, but they're too small for the bird to get his beak through. This pet carrier has a plastic door. It's got bigger air holes on the side. This bird, if he decided he wanted to come out, he could destroy that bird, that door, and come right on out. He might be able to get his beak enough through these air slits to break his way out. So it's something you have to be aware of or thinking about when you're picking out a travel cage for your bird. I also can tell you this is going to be more expensive than this. So it's important to train the bird to enter their carrier using a food reward. Because otherwise, they're not going to want to get in their carrier. And if a parrot doesn't want to get in its carrier, you don't want to grab it. It's going to bite you. So you need to work with the bird. Once the bird is comfortable going in the cage, carry it around the house for a while. Take it for a short drive around the block so it's kind of used to it. You need something for them to grip. So inserting a perch like this is great. You can drill holes in the side of one of these types of carriers and put in a perch as well. A loose towel on the bottom is not going to be enough. The bird can grab it, but that towel slides around. So what I'm going to do for a second here. So I'm going to go over here. This is worth listening to, so I'm going to put the link in the chat. It's about a 2-minute video. I recommend watching it. I'm going to play it on my computer too, because it's funny. And come back when you finished watching it.
Go. You gotta go in your carrier. Yes, you do. Better quit saying words like that. Come on, let's go. Up. Get your butt out here. Come on, let's go. You got it. You gotta go in your carrier. You gotta get your nails done. You heard what I said. Get your butt out of here. Let's go. Maxwell.
Yeah, so that cockatoo, Mr. Max, is probably one of the best cared for cockatoos in that I've ever been aware of. And you can see that even though he's very well cared for, oh, fuzzy boy, he's hard to handle. All right. Mary, you have a comment?
Yeah, I was wondering, do they have avian vets that will come to your house, do you think?
suspect not. Um, There might be some specialists who are very expensive
Yeah.
that will come to your house, but finding it's getting easier to find vets that will work on birds, but a lot of vets just won't. I see a couple of people saying the hospital that they, or the vet they work at does house calls. So some of them will, yeah. But even so, you still got to catch the bird up. All right. So small songbirds should have an indoor flight cage. This is one that obviously was handmade, so it's got a couple of problems. It's got a wood frame, which I'm not thrilled with, but this is for finches, and finches are not going to chew on the wood. But it's hard to clean wood. So that kind of worries me here. You can see they've got some wire from the hardware store. They made their own cage here, probably a lot cheaper than you could buy a cage this size. The small songbirds should have room to fly. So you shouldn't have lots of bars in the middle of the cage that the birds would have to maneuver around. A couple of perches is fine. And toys should be kind of on the side. Yes, they should have toys. But they need that flight room. They need to be able to fly. As a general idea, minimum size, and again, we're talking about songbirds, the width should be 2 to 3 times the bird's wingspan, how wide their wings are. The length should be 6 times the body length. And the height should be about 4 times the body height. So this just kind of gives you an idea of how big the cage should be. The bird should be able to flap their wings a couple of times, flying from one side to the other side. That's the minimum size. Bigger is better. Buying a flight cage for small songbirds is going to be relatively expensive. Something about the minimum size here is going to run you probably, I haven't priced these lately, but it's probably going to run you $100. So a zebra finch probably costs you $20 at the pet store, but the cage is going to cost you a lot more. The parrots, including the parakeets or the budgies, do not need a flight cage. They should have lots of perches and lots of toys. Because they're going to be climbing around the cage, not flying back and forth. But I also think parrots should have flight time outside of their cage. Okay, screenshot time. Believe it or not, this structure back here, it's glassed in, which I don't like. This is an indoor aviary. So somebody's very well to do. Indoor aviaries can be something like this, which is very elaborate. It can also be part of a room converted to a cage. So I've seen and heard of people who might take a bedroom like this and cage off half of the bedroom for their birds. In this case, the cage is too big to move outside or to the bathroom for cleaning, because cages need to be cleaned regularly. So in that case, the location should be hosable. So you should be able to go in, scrub down the cage from the inside. So you have to be able to fit in it. So you get in the cage to clean it. And there should be a drain in the floor nearby. Now with floor drains, you need to either keep it outside the cage or have a solid covering over the drain if it's inside the cage. So you can remove the solid covering while you're cleaning, but you don't want your bird to get either into the drain, which would be a disaster, or get their foot caught. You know, if you look at shower drains, they have these little holes, and you can just imagine a little bird leg going down one of those and them having trouble getting it back out again. The floor should be tile or concrete. And it should be tile that's designed for wet areas. Concrete is better. No carpet. I don't recommend vinyl or linoleum. How do I spell linoleum? All of these vinyl, linoleum, carpet release something called VOCs, volatile organic compounds. So if you've ever smelled new carpet, new vinyl, new linoleum, it's got that funny odor to it. That is VOCs, and they are harmful to birds and they are harmful to people. It's just that your bird, being smaller, is going to be more significantly affected by it than you are. I really don't recommend these products for that reason. If you get new flooring installed in your house, so new carpeting, or you get new furniture also releases these VOCs. Birds should go on a vacation until it doesn't smell. So that can be a couple of weeks. You got to find someone who's willing to take care of your bird for a couple of weeks. If you are going to use something like linoleum or vinyl, like I said, I don't recommend it, but if you're building a flight cage for songbirds, you can use vinyl or linoleum, but it should be aged. Abigail, I'm going to get your question in a second. Preferably outside, again, until it doesn't smell. I don't recommend hardwood inside a cage. So if you're building an indoor aviary, I don't recommend hardwood floors. If you've got hardwood floors in your house, but your cage has a different flooring, it's okay for the birds to be out and to walk around on that. But again, if you have it refinished or you have it newly installed and you can smell those VOCs, that's dangerous for the birds. So again, if you're getting your hardwoods refinished or you're getting new hardwoods installed, your bird has to go on vacation. Okay, I'm getting ready to erase this. All right. Perches. These need to be cleaned or changed regularly. If you see droppings on the perch, it's time to pull it out and clean it. So wash them with dilute bleach. You're trying to kill any potential germs on it. Then rinse well and dry. So what types of perches? Variety. You want a lot of different options. Wider around is better. And not straight is better. So you don't want something that looks like a pencil. Narrow, straight. You want something that looks more like a natural branch. And if you have a yard, branches from the yard can be fine. If they were not treated with pesticides or herbicides, if you clean them first, because they could have diseases from wild birds, they could have insects that you might not want in your house. And we want to avoid things like pine that have a sticky resin. So you know how Christmas trees and pine trees, they have a sticky sap that comes out. You don't want to use something like that. If you're buying perches, manzanita wood is fabulous. It's easy to clean. It lasts a long time. You can buy it on Amazon, you can buy it from pet stores. Of course, I have to give you the caveat. You want to be careful when buying, because some people harvest wild manzanita trees. They literally go out into the forest and cut down manzanita trees and bushes and chop them up and sell the branches. So you don't want to be participating in the destruction of wild trees for your pet birds. So variety in size, shape, and texture is good. You want them moderately steady. Some flexibility or movement is okay. But you don't want the bird you don't want the branch to fall when the bird lands on it. So a little bit of wiggle, that's good. That helps them exercise those leg and feet muscles. That's good for the birds. Okay, so that's perches. There's one other thing I want to talk about while I'm still on this slide. And that is UV light. What is UV light? You guys know what this is? Did you talk about it in the HERP class? If you took the HERP class already? Yes, good. Well, just like, yeah, ultraviolet, absolutely. Just like with the herps, birds need UV or ultraviolet light. So you can get this from sunlight, but many windows block the UV rays. Especially some of the higher end, more expensive windows, they'll have a coating on the window to prevent that UV light, because the UV light that can damage your carpeting, it can make all your furniture fade. But even plain glass blocks some of the UV. You can buy UV bulbs. These put out less UV over time, but they're still putting out visible light. So you have to keep track of the age of the bulbs and replace regularly. Different bulbs are going to have different lifespans. LEDs will have the longest lifespans. Okay. Anybody have any questions at this point? This is a good screenshot time because we're going to move on. All right. So we've already kind of talked about how many birds. We've talked about it in terms of the bird's mental health and what's good for them to socialize with each other, to have company. But we also have to think about the size of the cage. If you have a cage, so for example, 8 foot by 4 foot by 8 foot. So this would be a huge cage, right? This is a cage that you could walk into. This could house 20 budgies or 2 Amazon parrots. Size matters, as well as how well the birds get along. A lot of people who have multiple birds that they let fly loose during the day, they have individual cages for the birds at night. So the birds go back into their own cage, or maybe with one companion. Number and types depends both on the species and the individual bird. Some individuals are going to be more social than others, just like people. And some species really need a lot of companionship. So things like the finches do well in relatively larger groups. But breeding season can cause an increase in fighting. Birds want to set up territories, they want to start mating, and they will squabble. So when we talk about groups, I like to put birds in pairs or groups of at least 5. If you've got 3, it often happens that 2 of them will team up and pick on the other one. You can get that kind of thing with 4 as well, but 5 seems to be like a good number. You get 2. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, because it certainly happens, especially in like chickens, but you tend not to have one bird constantly picked on once you get above 5. Chickens are an exception. And if you've got a group, only males or only females will reduce fighting during breeding season, but not completely eliminate it. And yes, females will fight with each other just like males will. Okay, screenshot this real quick. So what about mixing species? Well, many types of finches and canaries can do well in mixed groups. Not all kinds of finches so some species of finches are different sizes from each other, and some of them have different levels of aggression. So the size and the level of aggression matter when mixing. Zebra finches and canaries tend to be fine. Society finches and canaries tend to be fine. Those are the 2 species of finches you're most likely to see in the pet trade. and the ones that do the best in captivity. These small songbirds, if you have a large enough cage, doves and quail can mix with small songbirds. So you can have zebra finches, you can have canary, and you can have these little guys. These little guys are sometimes called popcorn. What are they called? They're miniature quail. And small doves, not city pigeon size doves, definitely smaller. Doves and quail tend to be skittish though. And they may popcorn if startled. What do I mean by popcorn? Jump, yes. They will jump up and try and fly straight up, and then they'll hit their heads on the top of the cage. So you need a tall cage. The longer a species has been kept in captivity, the lower the risk of this. So if you see white doves, they're going to do much better in captivity than if you say tried to hand rear a mourning dove and keep that in captivity. I don't recommend it, guys. Mourning doves do not do well in cages, period. None of these birds on this page should be mixed with parrots, including budgies. Ooh, a fan-tailed white dove. Those are pretty. Okay, so you painted her tail feathers with food coloring. Well, okay. Yeah, I can see that. All right, take a screenshot of this. I'm going to talk about the parrots next. Mixing parrots. You want to limit the number in a cage. Sleeping cages for parrots, 1, maybe 2 birds. They tend to like to have their own bedrooms. If they're very tightly bonded to each other, they can share a cage at night. Similar size is important. So if you've got, let's say Amazon parrots, which are, yay big, and budgies that are like yay big, the Amazons could do a lot of damage to the budgies much faster than you can get in there and stop the problem. So if you let your birds fly loose, you kind of got to get a feel for how well they get along, but I wouldn't recommend budgies with any of the larger parrots, maybe with some of the conures. And when we talk about the conures, probably not with like the cockatoos or the macaws, because those are much bigger birds and they can, cause a lot of damage. All right, any questions yet? All right. What about Essex Tech has a cockatoo and Amazon that would snuggle and kiss. Well, that's good. I'm a little surprised. Like I said, there's individual differences. There's always
Yeah.
going to be those kinds of cases.
Yeah, they were pretty much life partners. They were so close.
That's
I
awesome.
think one was named Beethoven, and the other, I forget the other's name. The cockatoo was named Beethoven, and whenever I'd walk into the bird room, we would see them together. They would always have their little faces pressed against each other.
Oh, that's sweet. Kristen said the other one's Zeke. Okay. That's probably a good way to have birds where they're pair bonded to each other like that, rather than, pair bonded to people. Okay. Outdoor caging. Flooring should preferably be concrete. Dirt floors, you can have parasites and diseases. You cannot clean a dirt floor. And dirt floors allow burrowing animals to get inside, which can be a significant risk to your bird. There needs to be good shelter from the wind, rain, and sun. Birds can get sunburned. So there needs to be some well-protected areas where the bird can get out of the weather. And again, you want to be careful about the metal. Galvanized metal is metal that's been treated to make it less likely to rust. So that is the preferred material for outside cages. Okay. We're going to stop here. We're going to come back and talk about outdoor flight cages next week. And we're going to talk about the potential dangers to outsides, the advantages to being outside. And I think our next topic after this is chickens, which of course are an outside pet. Does anybody have any questions on what we've covered today? Nope. Excellent. All right. In that case, have a good weekend, everybody, and I will see you next week.